Thank you very much for making a date on this edition of the Marketplace. Welcome back. Now, the country has been put on post-program monitoring by the IMF. This was after Ghana's debt threshold with the fund crossed levels that warranted to be placed on this initiative after the recent program completion. But would this come up with another round of conditionality? George Rafi tells us more.
Anytime a country goes for an IMF program and it comes with some financial assistance, that money is not free. It has to be paid back when the program is completed. Ghana's recent deal with the IMF resulted in the fund advancing more than $900 million to the Bank of Ghana. This, together with existing debt at the fund, meant that the country's debt portfolio has crossed $400 million. And for a lower middle-income country, it has to be put on the post-program monitoring. We understand that this happened around June this year. By this move, the IMF would make sure that the required policies are still implemented by government to ensure that the debt repayments are not affected in any way. The IMF staff will still be reviewing how the economy is being managed and provide the early warnings as well as risk. Now, these reports will be made available to the public and investors, which will indirectly act as a check on government. For some, it is expected to keep government on its toes, whilst others are describing it as timely, especially going into an election year. Sources say this move has rather given some assurance to investors who were worried about prudent spending and fiscal discipline post the IMF program. We are now picking up that this program wouldn't come with any strict conditionalities. But for those who thought that the recent completion of the IMF program would bring an end to those direct staff visits, reports and warnings, maybe you have to start revising your notes.
So placing the country on a post-program monitoring would not come with strict conditionality. That's an assurance from the IMF country representative to Ghana, Dr. Albert Tuna Mama. The IMF in June this year put Ghana on this program to ensure it is able to pay more than $1 billion debt to the fund. The Washington-based lender would also come out with reports and highlight risks that would impact on the debt payment. Dr. Tuna Mama tells Joy Business this is just a surveillance program.
The program is finished. The lending or extended credit facility has expired, right? The post-program monitoring is a process. So it's not a program, there are no conditionality or anything. It's just a process by which the fund, as a lender, because we lend money to Ghana at zero interest rate, by which we need to come and assess the capacity to repay. Okay, this is our fiduciary responsibility for the trust fund that has put the money for Ghana, right? We have once a year to write a report to say, these are the risks that we are seeing that may affect Ghana to capacity to repay. I will see it just as another layer to the Article 4, which is a surveillance relationship that all members of the IMF have, right? So this is an additional layer. So you have the Article 4 and you have the post-program monitoring as an additional layer to come and assess potential risk.
One critical thing that you're doing is to assess our ability to pay back. Now, if we are doing things that would affect that, I struggle to understand that, oh, this is just a surveillance program, we are just observing. Wouldn't that come with any recommendations to ensure that it doesn't affect our ability to service that debt?
I think that this is most useful for the managers of that trust fund, because they do some planification into when they'll get repayment, right? Having a sense that, oh, perhaps the probability to be repaid is lower or higher, have some implication for how they manage this pot of money. So it's used internally, although we produce a report because, the institution is transparent in putting together or putting out there the information that they collect. This is mainly used internally to inform the managers of the trust fund on how to allocate money in the trust fund.
From your own extrapolations and from what you are seeing, what are the timelines or the timetable for paying this almost $1 billion debt to the fund?
I mean, you need to know that the extended credit facility that just expired add a moratorium of 5.5 years before you start repaying it, right? From the first disbursement that was made in 2015. So the first payments for the program that have just expired will be in 2020 by this calculation. So it gives you, with a term of 10 years, right? So bit by bit, from 2020, that loan will eventually be fully repaid. But the authorities always have the option to make a bigger payment earlier on, right? That's the discretion that they have. But the interest rate, as I mentioned earlier, was 0.
All right, it's still live on the marketplace. Now, Ghana will be hosting the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement following its election by heads of state of member states. The CFTA is expected to bring together 54 African countries with a combined population of more than 1 billion people on a common market. This will make it one of the largest free trade areas since the formation of the World Trade Organization, WTO, given Africa's huge population. Now, so how is Ghana positioning itself to take advantage of the potential markets to be created? CEO of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Yofi Grant, joins me on phone from the United Arab Emirates to answer some pertinent questions. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the marketplace.
Good afternoon.
All right, so my first question, what is the benefit, the major benefit that Ghana stands to gain from this trade agreement?
Oh, definitely there is a great benefit. I mean, to be named out as the headquarters of African trade in itself has significant impact on our own economy. If you would quite remember, I've always said that Ghana is in the center of the world. We are the only country on latitude 0, longitude 0. So as a logistics hub, we're sort of equidistant from everywhere. And that gives us a certain advantage, trade advantage, first of all. But the fact that, Ghana has always been a cheerleader of African political and financial economic emancipation gives us tremendous credit in hosting the CFTA. That sort of puts us to spearhead trade and investment across the continent. And for us, even as an office, it's significant opportunity, job creation opportunity, because lots of people are going to be hired. It will require a lot of housing. It will require a lot of transportation. It will be requiring schools to educate the children of the people who work there, and also sets Ghana as a hub for international offices in Africa, I believe. Because once this happens,
Mr. Grant,
what we're going to see is we're going to have some of the agencies then start relocating their embassies. Sorry, not the embassies, their headquarters, regional headquarters in Accra. Okay. Because it makes a lot of sense.
So my next question is, how do we as a country, positioning ourselves to ensure that we influence the flow of foreign direct investments through this trade agreement?
The CFTA itself creates a very important market for Africa. And we've always said that intra-Africa trade has always been less than 15%. But if you compare intra-European trade, it's somewhere above 70%. And so for us, comparatively, we're not doing enough amongst ourselves. Now, having said that, and creating one single large market, which 90% of our goods will be tariff-free, means that then it gives us the opportunity and the impetus to go out to manufacture stuff that we can export to the continent. And the truth of the matter is, the CFTA being doesn't mean that we still should have our economies predicated on the export of our imports of our raw materials between each other. For example, I don't want Kenya to just export coffee beans to me, nor do I want to export my cocoa beans to Kenya. I want to add value. I would rather prefer exporting my chocolate, my cocoa liquor, my cocoa paste to Kenya, and Kenya exporting their processed coffee to us. That's where the value is. And that creates the opportunity for us to industrialize. Okay. And that is why the policy of a one district, one factory came at the very right time. That is the reason why the policy of planting for food and jobs has come at the right time. And that is why the drive to vastly improve our infrastructure, the rail network, our road networks, our waterways, and our airports has come at the right time. Because then we are going to see a new economy. And I dare say that the one district, one factory is instructive in that, adding value to our raw materials and resources, and then being able to export them into the continent makes a lot more sense than what we had before, where we're just exporting our cocoa beans, our bauxite, our timber, and manganese in the raw form to other continents.
Very well.
This time, we're going to add value for the whole continent. So the manufacturing capacity will definitely be enhanced.
Very well. Now, Mr. Grant, there's also this concern.
Is attracting foreign direct investments that will enable us partner with Ghanaians and create linkages across the markets and the value chain, all in Africa.
Now, lastly, before you go, there's this concern that this trade agreement could expose us as a country or other countries to dumping, because it gives opportunity for people, because of the fact that we are trading amongst ourselves. They could bring on board, or they could dump certain commodities that are not too relevant in the space. Is it possible?
Yes, of course, there will always be concerns about possibilities, but I'm not sure we should open ourselves to infinite possibilities that can occur, because there are rules and regulations that are going to be at play. It doesn't mean that because you are one market, you can just throw things across the border any time you want. But the important thing is that you're increasing trade amongst the countries. And yes, I also do concede that as your economy becomes comparatively much better than other economies, then you become a victim of either economic migrants looking for jobs or adding value to it. But at the end of the day, what is more important is how we can create an environment, and the President has said clearly that Ghana should be the best place to do business in Africa in the medium term. And clearly at the beginning of his tenure, he did say that Ghana should become a hub for West Africa. And so a lot of the policies that we have today are in that direction. A lot of the reforms that we are seeing in our business sector and investment sector are to rightly position us as a hub to improve. But we also do have laws, and immigration laws are pretty clear on that. And even with the CFT, the laws of engagement are clear. It's not just going to be an open for all field where anybody can do anything in each other's country. No, that's not. Not what it is.
Many thanks for your time. Jofi Grant is the CEO of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, joining us live from Dubai, the United States of the United Emirates, Dubai. Let's move on to other stories now. Minister for Aviation, Kofi Adda, has expressed government's commitment to supporting the Ghana Association of Aviation Training Organizations for Aviation Development. Speaking at the launch of the institution, he said it is in line with many requirements aimed at making Ghana an aviation hub and to improve quality and standard of the human resource base within the aviation industry. Here's more in this report.
In order to evade an anticipated shortage of skilled professionals in the aviation sector, the International Civil Aviation Organization has over the years urged member states to focus on training institutions to improve on quality. It is on the back of this the Ghana Association of Aviation Organization was launched to control the quality and standards of training provided by various aviation training schools in the country. At the launch, Minister for Aviation Kofi Adda said the initiative will help improve the quality of staff within Ghana's aviation industry.
In aviation, the delivery of customer service is very important. The ground handling personnel, the check-in, the counters, and then the cabin crew, the way they serve passengers, all those things are very important. Unless we're very efficient, we're very professional, we deliver the services to be consistent with global standards, will not be competitive. I think we need to formalize the association of the heads of those institutions and then support them with the sort of mechanisms that are required to make sure that their curricula and all the other course materials that they use to train the students are consistent with what's happening globally in recognized institutions in different parts of the world.
The association will comprise of all accredited training institutions in the country with the aim of streamlining their activities. Charles Chum is the president of the association.
As we speak now, all the schools are doing their own thing. People are running all kinds of courses which are not accredited by civil aviation. So when we come together, they will go through certification, so they will become an approved training organization, so that they will be able to run regulatory courses such as flight dispatch, cabin crew, air traffic control courses, and what have you. So when they will expand their horizon to be able to run a lot of courses to supplement what civil aviation is also doing. Because if you read what I talked about, ICAO research they've done for 2036. They need about 7,000 traffic controllers. Piloting, we are talking about 7,000 and something maintenance engineers, over 1.3 million. And these are the gaps that when we establish the schools and we certify them very well, they should be in a position to run all these programs.
For Joy Business, Sheila Tamaklo reporting.
Now, former staff of one of 5 banks which had their licenses revoked by the Bank of Ghana, the Heritage Bank Limited Heritage, have rejected an exit package which was agreed upon with the receiver. The aggrieved staff, in a press statement copied to Joy Business, have accused the receiver, Vish Ashiagbo of PricewaterhouseCoopers, of shortchanging them by setting aside the conditions of service of Heritage Bank Limited. They therefore are appealing to the President and the Finance Minister to step in on, or they will be left with no option than to seek legal redress as their human rights are being violated. Joining me for some more details is former staff Constance Bejo, and to explain some more details on this particular topic. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
So what exactly are you complaining about?
Yeah, ever since the license of the bank was revoked by the Bank of Ghana under the Banking Act, the staff were given 3 months contract with PwC, the receiver.
Okay.
And that contract had elapsed. And ever since, staff had been home. Majority of staff had been home, expecting that they will get some package to manage their life with going forward.
Now, were you not represented on any of the negotiations with the receiver before the package came out?
Yeah, staff selected 3 people to engage the receivers negotiators. And we also employed a labor specialist to engage with the receivers negotiator to do this negotiation.
And so at that point, why didn't you agree on the best, for your members?
The law prescribes what is supposed to be done when staff are on redundancy. And so the package is actually contained in our HR human resource policy. And negotiation uphold those packages, but at a point we realized that there were mistakes, errors, and
in the negotiation,
and inconsistencies. And at the end of the process, a memorandum of understanding was signed, and this memorandum of understanding actually also omitted some salient conditions that were agreed on previously.
Now, before the MOU was signed, did you take into consideration those errors that were found out?
Yeah, the errors came to bear at the point where the memorandum of understanding were being signed. They were omitted. Those things that were agreed previously were now omitted from that memorandum of understanding. And we also had a view that for staff to enjoy minimum welfare during this period, certain minimum packages would have to be prescribed. All those things were ignored, and the receiver is rather imposing his own packages on staff.
Now, you also mentioned the fact that your conditions of service were set aside, at the expense of your members. Why is this so?
Yes, like I said already, these negotiations picked up those conditions of service. And so during the signing of the memorandum of understanding, some of these conditions were removed, or packages were removed. And then also, after the memorandum of understanding had been signed, the receiver, Pricewaterhouse, represented by Vish Ashiagbo,
exactly,
wrote back to the staff that certain conditions, packages that were agreed upon, he was not going to honor them.
For what reason?
The reason not clear to staff as we speak. And so we are seeking to meet with him and then understand why those, even though the letter stated certain reasons, those reasons did not resonate with staff.
So what are some of the conditions, the pertinent ones that were omitted out of the negotiation process?
Yeah, our proposal, which is contained in the human resource policy and upheld by the law, is saying that we are entitled to clothing allowances and then also fuel allowances. And the receiver, the agreement signed was that they were going to pay the fuel and the clothing allowances for only the first quarter of 2019. And that was what they signed. And the receiver now says that he's not going to honor those particular allowances.
All right. So now you're going to meet with Vish again.
We are seeking the opportunity to re-engage with the receiver and its negotiators, and then to begin the negotiation.
Does it mean you're not going to take any aspect of it in the interim until the total negotiation?
No, we want to go the full haul, renegotiate the package. And that's why we are seeking the attention of civil society organization, the president, and everybody too.
Now, so if you should hit the snag in the negotiations, what are you going to do next? You cautioning of going to court for redress.
Yes, even in this negotiation, what had happened was at a point that was around May 8th, we're given an update that negotiation had broken, and therefore they were going to resort to for arbitration. And so that was what we understood at that point in time. And all of a sudden, they abandoned that idea. So we had the option that if negotiation fail, we'll proceed on arbitration.
Your final words before we close.
Yeah, the law, the reason we all live peacefully in Ghana is necessary because we are organized people. It's the law, we are law-abiding people. The same law that mandates the receiver to enter our business, take over assets and liability to manage. It's the same law that is saying that the people who will suffer those actions have certain entitlements.
Many thanks for your time. Constance Bejo is a former staff of Heritage Bank. We'll certainly get the views of Vish Ashabo in subsequent bulletins to actually put it out clear on what is the way forward. Now, moving on, the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers Ghana, COPEC, Duncan Amoah, has lauded two oil marketing companies, Goil and Goodness, for adjusting their palms downwards to compensate customers who were shortchanged recently after the exercise by the Ghana Standards Authority.
We went out, reached out to some of the oil marketing companies. We had calls to go to court and all of that, but these are machines that the stations work with. They can malfunction for one reason or the other. People can also tamper with them. But we have said that the stations have gone ahead to pay their fines that the Standards Authority fined them. Beyond that, what comes to the trotro driver? What comes to the taxi driver? So we've had a sort of some engagement with these affected stations. We have also requested that they themselves put together something so that these customers of theirs or consumers who buy fuel from them would at least not feel left out or cheated. And so today, as you saw, Goodness Energy are adjusting their pumps down so that people can get some savings when they buy fuel. That program kicks in by close of today.
And that will be it for the marketplace today. Many thanks for your company. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. Have a good afternoon.